My name is Aiko, and I collect stories that settle in the shadows, between confession and silence. Tonight, I share a memory whispered to me in a cafe where afternoon light filtered through windows, like judgments waiting to be pronounced. This is a tale of calculated precision, where betrayal was answered, not with tears but with a patience that transformed pain into power, and where love and vengeance learned to dance together, in ways that would make even the gods uncomfortable. The story came to me in Okayama, a city in western Japan known for its clear skies and resilient spirit. Though on this particular afternoon, the sky seemed heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. I had traveled there for work, following the routine path of quarterly business visits, that had become as predictable as seasonal changes. The pharmaceutical company I was visiting sat in an industrial district 20 minutes from the station, surrounded by the geometry of progress and the quiet hum of commerce. The woman who would share her secret with me was named Sayaka, 39 years old and occupying the kind of management position that speaks of intelligence, carefully cultivated, and ambition precisely directed. When she greeted me in the lobby, I noticed the way she carried herself, not with the nervous energy of someone seeking approval, but with the steady confidence of someone who had learned to depend entirely on their own judgment. Our business concluded earlier than expected, the afternoon settling around us like dust after a storm. As I prepared to leave, Sayaka hesitated in that particular way that suggests important words are gathering themselves, preparing for an entrance that will change the atmosphere of everything that follows. "If you have time," she said, her voice carrying the careful modulation of someone who has rehearsed a conversation in her mind many times before speaking it aloud. "Would it be possible to speak privately for a moment?" The cafe she chose was the kind of place where secrets feel safe. Small wooden tables scattered across a space that seemed designed for conversations that required discretion. We settled by a window that looked out onto a street where people moved with the purposeful rhythm of afternoon errands, each person carrying their own collection of unfinished business and private concerns. Sayaka ordered coffee with the precision of someone who had learned that small decisions, made carefully, could be practice for larger ones. I chose tea, and we sat in the kind of silence that precedes revelations, watching steam rise from our cups like incense, offered to whatever gods preside over the sharing of carefully guarded truths. "Next month," she began, her eyes focused on the coffee cup, as if it contained the script for words she had been practicing, "my former partner is getting married." The statement hung in the air between us, neither question nor accusation, simply a fact presented for consideration. I offered the kind of neutral response that invites elaboration without judgment, and she continued, her voice gaining strength as she moved deeper into territory she had mapped carefully in her own mind. "The woman he is marrying," she said, and something in her tone suggested that this detail was the key that would unlock everything that followed, "is the person who took him from me." The story that emerged over the next hour was the kind that reminded me why human beings require art and literature, because reality, in its raw form, often exceeds the imagination's capacity for both cruelty and complexity. Sayaka had been involved with a man named James for nearly 3 years, a relationship that had possessed all the markers of permanence: shared routines, future plans, the kind of comfortable intimacy that develops when two people begin to see themselves as a single unit navigating the world together. James worked in sales for a company in their industry, visiting clients and building the kind of professional relationships that sometimes grew into personal ones. He was 41 now, she told me, though when they met, he had been 38 and possessed of the kind of confidence that comes from believing the world will continue to reward his efforts with increasing levels of success and recognition. Their relationship had followed the predictable arc of mature courtship: dinner dates that became weekend trips, separate apartments that gradually merged their contents, conversations about marriage that evolved from hypothetical to practical. Sayaka had been 37 when they began discussing specific timelines for engagement, venue preferences, the thousand small details that transform abstract commitment into concrete planning. The end, when it came, arrived with the sudden efficiency of natural disasters. James requested a meeting at a restaurant. They had never visited together, a choice that Sayaka would later recognize, as his attempt to ensure the location carried no sentimental weight that might complicate his resolve. He spoke with the rehearsed clarity of someone who had practiced his words, explaining that his feelings had changed, that he had discovered a different kind of connection with someone else, that he believed honesty required immediate action rather than gradual transition. The other woman was named Emma, 29 years old and employed by one of James's major clients. She possessed what Sayaka described as the kind of youth that makes everything seem possible, unmarried, unencumbered by the weight of previous disappointments, free to offer the kind of uncomplicated devotion that 41-year-old men sometimes confuse with true compatibility. The betrayal cut with surgical precision through everything Sayaka had believed about her life's trajectory. At 37, she faced the particular terror that haunts women who have invested significant emotional resources in relationships that dissolve without warning, fear that time itself had become an enemy, that the biological and social calendars which govern women's lives would not offer generous opportunities for starting over. The months that followed were an education in the archaeology of heartbreak. Sayaka discovered that grief requires the same kind of systematic attention, that any important project demands careful examination of what had been lost, honest assessment of what remained, strategic planning for reconstruction that would prevent similar future collapses. She threw herself into her work with the intensity of someone who understood that professional achievement could serve as both distraction and foundation for whatever came next. Her performance reviews reflected this renewed focus, leading to promotions and salary increases that transformed her personal disappointment into professional advantage. But Sayaka was not the kind of person who accepted defeat as permanent. As she rebuilt her career and her confidence, she also began to pay attention to information that flowed through their shared professional network, updates on James's company, details about Emma's background, the kind of intelligence that accumulates naturally when someone knows how to ask the right questions and listen carefully to the answers. 6 months after their breakup, Sayaka learned something that transformed her grief into something far more dangerous: opportunity. James's company was experiencing financial difficulties, struggling with the kind of cash flow problems that often preceded more serious organizational crises. The company's client list included several pharmaceutical firms, and one of their most important accounts was managed by Sayaka's own organization. The revelation arrived through the casual conversation that characterizes industry. Gathering, someone mentioning declining revenues, another person noting cancelled contracts, the gradual assembly of a picture that showed James's professional world becoming increasingly unstable. Sayaka absorbed this information with the careful attention of someone who understood that knowledge, properly applied, could become leverage. She began to research the business relationship between her company and James's employer, with the thoroughness of someone conducting due diligence for a major acquisition. The contract was substantial, representing nearly 30% of James's company's annual revenue. More importantly, it was due for renewal within the next 6 months, and Sayaka's position in management gave her significant influence over the decision-making process. The plan that formed in her mind possessed the elegant simplicity of good architecture. Every element served multiple purposes, and the overall structure was both beautiful and functional. She would use her professional authority to terminate or significantly reduce her company's business relationship with James's employer, justifying the decision through legitimate concerns about cost efficiency and vendor diversification.